There is something that hurts even more than seeing him with another woman. Imagining that he has forgotten you. That after everything you experienced together, the words, the looks, the promises, the laughter, he is now simply lying next to someone else, sleeping peacefully as if nothing had happened, as if you had never existed. But what very few women know is that the body can move quickly, but the mind does not follow as fast. And the heart even less so. Yes, he can be with another woman, hold her, pretend that everything is fine, but there is that silent, unexpected, brutal moment, exactly when the room becomes quiet and the lights go out, when an image appears without permission. And that image is you. This does not happen by chance. It happens when you have left traces, when your way of loving was not loud but deep, when your silence said more than his words, when your everyday gestures, like the way you touched his back, that laugh only you had when he spoke about his quirks, became a home. He can kiss other lips, touch another's skin. But there is something that cannot be easily replaced. The emotional security you gave him. The feeling that someone had seen him entirely, even in his most broken parts. And that is precisely why his mind starts comparing after sex. When the physical urgency is over, she may be attractive, she may be sweet, she may try to make him feel desired. But if you were genuine, if you didn't pretend to please him, if you loved him from the heart and not from need, then you are inside him, not on his skin, but in his emotional memory. And that, believe me, is much harder to erase. That's why you don't have to compete. You don't have to belittle yourself to get his attention. You don't have to post hidden messages or show your best side on social media just to see if he reacts. You don't need validation. You lived something with him that no one else can copy. A connection that is not rehearsed, it is felt. Because when a woman is real, when she doesn't try to adapt, but to express herself, when she doesn't seduce but radiates, she becomes the reference, and everything that comes after her sounds like a copy. The key is not to be in his life. The key is to be so strong in his memory that even when he embraces another woman, for a brief moment he feels that something is missing. Without being able to explain it, without wanting to admit it, but he feels it. And if you can trigger that, and without begging, if you do it by returning to your center, if you stop asking why he didn't choose you and start asking why you stopped choosing yourself. Because at the moment you return to yourself, when your energy is no longer wasted on trying to understand him, but on rebuilding yourself, remembering, recognizing your worth again, he starts to feel you again, but in a new, more intense, more real way. Because now you are no longer available. You are no longer waiting. You are no longer an option. You are a loss. And when a man feels that he has lost something irreplaceable, everything else seems meaningless. So do not despair when you see him with another woman. Do not fall into the mistake of thinking that everything is over. The strongest story is not always the one that ends with forever. Sometimes it is the one that leaves a scar, one that appears exactly when he thinks he has moved on, and he realizes there is still an emptiness, a name, a scent, a way of being that no one else had. And that woman is you. Now we are talking about something that many women only understand when it's too late. The difference between physical presence and emotional imprint. Many believe they no longer have influence when they are no longer in his life, but that is a mistake. The most powerful thing you can trigger in a man is not that he thinks of you when you are there, made up, smiling, touching his hand, and asking how his day was. The most powerful thing is that he thinks of you when he is with another woman, when he is distracted, when he has no idea why something suddenly stirs inside him. And it happens because, without realizing it, you have marked him deeper than he would ever admit. How do you leave such a mark on a man? Not with sex, not with control, and certainly not with dependency, but with emotional vibration, with the way you made him feel, with himself when he was with you, not with gifts, but with your look, with your listening, with the respect you had for his time, without neglecting your own, with your belief in him, even when he doubted himself, because that, as invisible as it may seem, men never forget. And when another woman tries to take that place, she may be able to do it physically. Yes, she may be funnier, more accessible, more flexible. But she will not create what you created. A mix of calm and desire, a sense of home and drive. That combination makes you unforgettable. And the best part, you don't have to do anything more, because the emotional comparison begins on its own. You are no longer there, you don't call, you don't ask questions, you don't search, but you are present in the only place where a truly strong woman must be, in his subconscious. And there is no competition. Because emotional memories cannot be erased by a new date, by an empty conversation, by another body. They remain, they are triggered completely unexpectedly. Sometimes in the middle of a conversation with another woman, sometimes in the quiet night when everything seems fine, but he feels that something is missing. And that is where the end begins, not your end, but the end of his illusion with the new one. Because when a woman has truly mattered, everything that comes after loses intensity, and he cannot explain it, but he feels it, and that is why he starts to look for you without looking. He checks your profiles without writing to you. He talks about you to his friends, disguised as an anecdote. He remembers details, words, scenes, and wonders exactly when he lost you. And he didn't lose you because of a fight, not because of a crisis. He lost you because he didn't know how to protect what was given unconditionally. And now the most important thing, you don't do it so he will come back. You do it to remind yourself that you are not replaceable. You do it to understand that your way of loving is too valuable to be wasted. And when you understand that, when you accept it, when you wake up every day with the certainty that you don't need to be chosen to feel complete, then the real magic happens. He starts to notice it, without knowing why, without understanding how, but he feels it, because you are no longer available. You are no longer the one who waits, no longer the one who sacrifices herself. You are now the one who remembers, who has learned, who moves on, even if it hurts. And this version of you is much more attractive than any perfect body or forced smile, because this version doesn't beg, this version doesn't settle for less. This version isn't there to be an option, but a choice, a sign of respect, a memory, and perhaps, if life wills it, the greatest regret of the one who didn't know how valuable you were. Most women who leave a lasting impression don't do it intentionally. They don't plan strategies, don't calculate their words, don't dress to provoke, don't act to impress. They simply are, and it is precisely this authenticity, this emotional truth, without masks, that is indelible. Because in a world where almost everything is just an appearance, a woman who is real, with her tenderness and her boundaries, with her love and her silence, unsettles. And when she is no longer there, she is missed more than he would ever admit. Men can replace bodies, temporarily fill emptiness, have fun, talk, even start a new relationship. But what they cannot easily replace is the energy left by a woman who loved them sincerely and unconditionally. That energy stays in emotional memory, where physical comparisons don't matter, but memories that brought peace do. How you breathed while you slept, how you gently caressed the back of his neck while listening to him. The phrases you told him when he felt lost. He won't look for that in anyone else, because he knows he won't find it there. And it is precisely there where you begin to gain space, not with words, not with messages, not with hints, but with your absence. An absence that is not punishment, but consequence. Not an act of revenge, but self-respect. An absence that doesn't seek him, but still reaches him. Because you didn't leave so he would come back. You left because you could no longer stay in a place where you were not protected. And from that moment on, from that silent decision, the real change begins. Because you are no longer there to justify his mistakes, no longer there to fill his emptiness, no longer there to calm his storms while he allowed himself to be chaos. Now you are with yourself. Now you begin to remember who you were before you tried to hold everything together. And this version of you, the one who looks at herself again with tenderness, who regains her voice, who learns to be alone without feeling incomplete, this version shines. And what shines disturbs, not because you do it to provoke, but because your light no longer illuminates him. It lights your own path. And he, in the shadow of what he didn't protect, now realizes that not every light can be turned back on at will. This unsettles him because he was used to you always being there, to you responding, to you showing up. But now he looks where you once were, and there is no one. And it is precisely then, when he no longer has you, that he begins to wonder why he lost you. Not why you left, but why he didn't try to stop you before you did. And he starts to piece the story back together, remembering all the times you gave without receiving anything, the times you yielded to avoid an argument, the times you stayed silent so as not to hurt him, and above all, the times you broke inside so that he wouldn't feel bad. And then he understands you didn't leave suddenly. You didn't stop loving. You were simply tired of loving alone. And that blow hits harder than any dramatic scene. Because you don't scream, you don't accuse him, you don't make a scene. You're simply no longer there. And in that silence, in that empty space, you once filled with your care, your laughter, your presence, he begins to see what he lost. And he sees it precisely when there is nothing he can do anymore. Because you no longer look back. You are healing, you are growing, you are returning to yourself. And that return, that intimate journey of restoration, that is what makes you powerful. Because you're not waiting for him to recognize your worth. You already know it. You no longer need validation. You've known it for a long time. And when a woman knows her worth, she doesn't beg for attention. She doesn't justify her leaving. She doesn't seek explanations from someone who never knew how to speak with the soul. She doesn't need to be reminded because she knows she will be remembered. Never underestimate the power of well-kept silence. In a world where everyone rushes to explain themselves, to justify feelings, to beg for an answer or a goodbye that soothes the ego, you choose silence. And that silence speaks louder than any speech because it is not empty silence. It is silence that has gained strength, silence that is not cowardice but dignity. When he tries to return to places where he was loved without deserving it, he no longer finds what was once there. And that unsettles him because he thought you would always be there, that you would stay out of habit, that your love was a given, that your patience was infinite. But not anymore. You are no longer available for someone who didn't appreciate your presence. You no longer respond as you once did. You no longer smile as you once did. You are no longer broken. And you no longer wait for him to fix what he destroyed with his emotional absence, because now you are in another place, not necessarily with another person, but with yourself, in peace, in calm, in rebuilding. And that is exactly what confuses him most, because he sees you shining without him, and he doesn't understand, because he always thought your light depended on his attention. But now he sees, no, your worth was always yours. Your energy hasn't gone out. It has simply been redirected back to you. Do you know when he starts thinking about you right after being with another woman? When that woman doesn't give him the peace you gave him. When she doesn't read his emotions in his eyes. When she doesn't have your laugh, your gaze, your way of touching his soul without a word. And then, no matter how hard he tries, he can't help but compare. Not because you were perfect, but because you were authentic. And authenticity is addictive. It can't be replaced, bought, or imitated. He starts to remember small things. How you looked at him without judgment. The pleasant silence, the hugs that felt like a refuge. The times you waited without asking for anything. The words you spoke when he was lost. He realizes that with you, he never felt alone, and now, even though he is accompanied, he feels empty. That's the moment he starts searching for you inside himself, when after another woman he thinks back to you without wanting to, but he can't help it. But you're no longer there, and not because you are taking revenge, but because you understood that you don't want to be anyone's consolation prize. You understood that someone who hesitates between you and another does not deserve either of you. And now you walk through life with a new certainty. You no longer need to close circles and build tall. The circle closed when you stopped fighting. The circle closed when you no longer needed to understand him because you understood yourself. And that is, for any man who ever had you, an irrevocable loss. Because, while he tries to forget you in other bodies, you have learned to find yourself again. And that makes you unreachable. Not because you are unapproachable, but because you no longer accept anything less than what you deserve. You do not compete. You do not seduce. You do not impose yourself. You have simply arrived at yourself, and whoever doesn't know how to reach you should simply keep going. You no longer open your door to everyone, not because you have closed yourself off to love, but because your heart now has filters, and not everyone passes them. Now that you have regained your center, you don't need him to miss you. You no longer wait for messages in the middle of the night. You no longer check his online status. You no longer look for signs where there is nothing left, because you are no longer in waiting mode. You are in rebirth mode. You bloom without permission. You rebuild yourself without asking for help from the one who once destroyed you. And that, even if no one applauds it, is the greatest silent victory a woman can experience. He can be with anyone. He can post photos. He can pretend he is fine. He can tell his friends you were too intense, too emotional, too complicated. But you know the truth. You know what you gave. You know how you loved. And deep in your heart, you know you didn't lose yourself because you loved. You lost yourself because you stayed when you were no longer loved. And now that you know that, you will not go back. Because you have understood, when a woman stays for someone who is absent, she is the one who disappears. And you are no longer willing to disappear for anyone. Your new version no longer gives herself without reciprocity. She no longer breaks herself to hold others together. She no longer keeps silent to protect the peace of someone at war with himself. Your new version speaks clearly, feels deeply, and walks far when she is not valued. And it is exactly this version, this woman you built from pain, silence, and dignity, that he will remember. Not when he is alone, but right after he has been with another. Because it is exactly then, when he thinks he is distracted, that your image returns, your scent, your voice, your gestures, the times you laughed from the depths of your heart, cared for him without expecting anything, opened your soul to him without fear. And he realizes, perhaps for the first time, that it was not ordinary, that it will not happen again, that it cannot be replaced, because it was yours, and it no longer belongs to him. And you, in your new world, no longer care whether he comes back. You build a life so full that, even if one day you meet him, you feel no pain, only peace, and maybe even a little gratitude, because if he hadn't broken you, you would not have rebuilt yourself this way. A woman who learns to be alone, who chooses herself, who respects herself, who honors herself. She is unforgettable, not because she wants to be, but because she no longer needs to be. And it is exactly this energy, that of a woman who does not ask and does not want to be remembered, that one never forgets. Now I want to speak directly to you, to the woman who has read or listened until now with a lump in her throat, to you who may be in the middle of this process, to you who are awakening, letting go, returning to yourself. I say to you, heart to heart, you are not alone. Thousands of women are walking the same path as you. And every step you take toward yourself is a radical act of self-love, a deep act of healing, a true act of self-worth. If these words have moved you, if you felt they spoke directly to your heart, if you saw yourself in them, subscribe to this channel, but not only to hear more content like this, but as a declaration to yourself that you choose yourself, that you will never again beg for love, that your story deserves to be told with dignity. And if you know a woman who needs to hear this, a friend, a sister, a mother, a colleague, send her this video. Because what is not spoken repeats itself. And maybe she too will wake up because of these words. Finally, I invite you to write this sentence in the comments. My absence is my answer. Write it as a testimony, as a symbol, as a promise. Because when a woman stops explaining why she is leaving, her silence says it all. And you are no longer here to explain to someone how they lose a woman like you.